What's your relationship to failure? Now, there's a question that really can bring up a lot in us, that not least in the times we find ourselves in. That that and that what we've learned since an early age about failure. It looks different from all of us, but our relationship to failure and what we understand to be failure um, affects our children a lot. It teaches them about uh, both how we view them and also how they relate to learning and what they learn about our ability as human beings to change and adapt and be resilient, or that things are fixed, including their abilities and their intelligence. So I want to talk a little bit about how that shows up in our lives as parents, in relation to our children, and in relationship to ourselves as well, but with the light touch, a short video about failure. Um, so obviously failure has a bad rap in the times we're in. Uh, so much of our time is spent proving ourselves, improving ourselves, perfecting ourselves. And yet, like me, you might have heard and even experienced perhaps yourself this sense of not being enough, of being inadequate, of falling short. And we celebrate our successes. We show the thousands of ways that we master life, that we are competent, whether that's through showing diplomas or posting on social media, whatever it might be. Uh, our so-called successes, competence, and mastery are given so much more weight and positive appreciation than our failures. And I'm advocating for us to be less strict around how we value one over the other, and that failure has a absolutely necessary part in the chaos and miasma of life. That it's integral to being fully alive, and it's integral to creativity, and it's integral to enjoying life and understanding our humanity and understanding ourselves as human beings, not headed anywhere, really, not on a linear scale of progression. And when we change that into something that is a part of a good life, failure, then it becomes something we have to learn to relate to in that way as well, as something life affirming, not as a setback or a sign that we are inadequate. Now, I believe that failure is humbling, and I've seen in the thousands of ways in which it is humbling, and it's very hard to let our children fail. It's painful sometimes as parents to let our children fail, to bear witness to their struggle with something they want to accomplish, and uh, and something that they are unable to accomplish, either momentarily or uh, ever, really. So failure is a way of confronting and wrestling with limits as well, limits to our capacities, uh, limits to our abilities, limits to our will, and how we are with limits, how we are with coming up against obstacles that are immovable, or coming up against our shortcomings, is immensely important for how our children learn to relate to life in all its many different aspects. Um, so it can be something we don't have to overcome, a failure. It can be something that we befriend instead, and something that awakens us, um, and stirs our curiosity, and even something we learn to delight in, that tells us and tells our children that they find themselves in the most magnificent place of being humbled and coming up against limits and confronting the finite resources and capacities of their life. Uh, and that goes against the grain of a lot of what we see in our day to day. But I believe it's essential for our children, whether they're of school age or younger, uh, not to be rescued from failure, and even to be pointed towards failure, not to be set up for failure, to have our loving support, but that love would include a willingness and acceptance to acknowledge, witness our children failing, not rescuing, loving, but not rescuing. Now, you might have already thought of some times when you've seen your child fail, and you might remember how you responded. And you might also think of ways in which you know yourself to relate to failure. So maybe next time you see your child engage with something, maybe you see your child taking a test in school and uh, not making the mark, not getting a grade that is satisfying to the child. I don't know what scale you might have, A to F, and they get an F. And they'll be looking for how, well, they know how the teachers have judged them, right? Because the system is set up to compare ourselves with others. And we're either better, the same, or worse. There are very few other options in the school system for how we compare ourselves to our peers. And if they get a low grade, they might take that as a judgment on their character, on their abilities, or in worst case, on their intelligence. Because it's easy as a child in a adult world where failure is a judgment, really, on their character, to see it be something fixed, something that is stamped on them, and that leads to a certain place in life, that they won't be as successful. I'm exaggerating, but you know what I mean, that it's devastating sometimes for the child to get a low grade in a system where they're tested, they can't look at their friends, they can't ask questions, tremendous pressure, and then they get a low grade, and that tells them something in relation to their peers. And so coming home then, and this is just an example, and there are thousands of others, but coming home then, can we greet them and say congratulations? And what it looks like not to rescue them is to say, well, what do you make of that? And what did you find difficult? And what are you learning from that? Both about the subject, of course, but also about yourself. Maybe you're learning that you get immensely stressed in a situation like that you're not your best when you're sitting isolated from people, unable to speak, and having to answer questions on a subject that doesn't interest you. You know, to set that so-called failure in a context of continuous learning. A part of that welcoming and celebrating of failure is that we become less concerned about their performance and more focused on this ever-changing creative process that we're all in. And to make that something they learn to love. I wish there was a word I could come up with right now other than failure. And maybe you have one. Maybe you could type it in the comments below or send it to me so that I can expand that word from something that's negative and burdensome to something that is just a part of our day-to-day and as welcome as anything else, really. So when your children struggle, don't focus on your child's abilities. Make sure that however you respond, uh, they understand that this is not an endpoint, that this failure doesn't speak to their character. What speaks to their character is their ability to welcome this challenge, welcome this obstacle, welcome this moment, and be in the process of learning. These are troubled times we're in. We all feel it in different ways, that these are troubled times, financially, ecologically, socially, communally, emotionally. These are hard times for families. These are hard times for couples. Now, I don't know if they're harder than other times, and they have their special challenges. But one thing in a troubled time is that we're going to have to rely on each other. We're going to have to turn towards each other. And one way of doing that is recognizing the limits of our capacities and our need for other people. So failing could also be something that points your child that they are on a path or engaged in something that they don't have a natural ability for, that they can't be anything they want to be, that they are here for a specific reason, with a specific gift that has a specific purpose in a specific time. And so failure in that sense is like the banks of a river that lets them flow in a direction that's most alive for them. And to respect that failure also, that it's not always there to be overcome, not always there to find your way around it, you know, but it suggests another path for our child. So that was what I had to say at the moment around failure and our relationship to failure and befriending it in a way that teaches our child to be in the process of learning rather than judging themselves and their character as a fixed uh, and immovable, unchangeable um, aspect of who they are. So, how can we welcome that failure in our homes? How can we see our child through a different lens? How can we uh, reframe the whole understanding of failure so that it becomes integral to our child's growth and integral to how their gift comes into the world? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. And if you enjoy this video, please subscribe, press the bell. You'll get notifications next time I put something up. That's all for now. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.